Good afternoon, colleagues. If we could just wait a couple more minutes. There's a quiet in the room, but a few colleagues are joining online as well. This is a hybrid meeting, so just 1 or 2 more minutes. Thank you.
Doing good. I've been to Arlac.
Okay, I think we should get this meeting underway. Many thanks to everyone who is joining, both online and here in person. There is the facility, as I understand it, to follow this discussion, not just in English, but also in French and Spanish. For those who are joining online, I understand that there is a set of notes in the chat feature that will allow you to do so as smoothly as possible, and there's also an operator on hand if you encounter any difficulties. Well, the agenda today is extremely straightforward. It's a conversation preceded by a briefing from the coordinator of the network and the Director General of IOM, Miss Amy Pope. It's a particularly special one because I think it's her first briefing as, well, I don't think, I know it's her first briefing on the network as coordinator. And so we're very pleased to have her time. Following the briefing, we will be showing you a very short 90-second piece of propaganda. This is the network in all its glory. I think it encapsulates what we're trying to do together. And following that, we will of course take interventions from the floor, both the physical floor and the virtual floor. So that's it by way of introduction. I'll now hand over to the Director General, the coordinator, Miss Amy Pope.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, and to be here in my very first my debut as the coordinator of the United Nations Network on Migration, and to do so on today, which, as you may know, is an American Thanksgiving. So I'll start by wishing you all a very happy Thanksgiving. And I'll say, in my country, this is a day where we recognize the rich history that migration has brought to the United States. We recognize the very diverse perspectives. We are grateful for what we have. We recognize what others may not have, and the importance of the network of family and friends and community that we have built in our home country. So I raise that because that is really what the UN Network on Migration is all about. It's not about the positions that we hold or the titles we have, although I'm very happy for my at least second or third title that I've acquired upon assuming this role. But ultimately, it's because of the people that we're serving, right? It's the migrants that we're serving. It's about building out a system that is not about where we sit in the UN network. It's not about where we sit in the world geographically. It's not about whether we are a country of origin, a country of destination, or a country of transit. It's a recognition that migration, when we all work together, when we bring all pieces of the network together, we actually create something that is extremely positive, extremely beneficial, that delivers not just for the migrants who are taking tremendous risks and journeys and having tremendous experiences, but it's really beneficial to the communities where migrants ultimately go. So the Compact is really about how do we promote a system that works for all people, and how do we minimize the negative impacts, the exploitation, the loss of lives, the tragedies that occur when migration is not well managed. And I want to start by saying, first and foremost, this is about grounding what we're doing together in human rights, right? We may not have the same protections that apply under the Refugee Convention, and some of you may have been witness to the public marriage we did yesterday to extend it just a little bit longer. And that partnership is extremely important. But what was really at the heart of that partnership is a recognition that regardless of which legal framework applies to migrants or refugees, the basic commitment to human rights, to human dignity is at the fundamental heart of the work we do. It's also really that at the heart of all of this is a truth that many of us share. It's that every person, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, no matter your religion or your background, no matter your belief system, every person matters. And that every person has tremendous capacity. Every person has agency. And that it's our responsibility as stewards of the Compact, as people who believe in the Compact, to really unleash that potential, to recognize the tremendous capacity for good that can really be harnessed when we work together as the Compact envisions. So let me start by being blunt with you. As you know, I am direct about our shortfalls, and I'll say the UN system is not the easiest to navigate. And it's okay to nod your head. I'm comfortable with that. I won't be offended. None of us in the room will be offended. But ultimately, the network is about trying to create some coherence. It's trying to bring together the different parties across the UN system who have a piece of the puzzle, who have a piece of the solution, and bringing us all together to bring a more just and more impactful a more comprehensive range of solutions. Ultimately, the Compact also gives us a way to hold ourselves accountable, right? It lays out clear expectations, clear objectives, a way to measure whether we are achieving our goals, and frankly, to be honest with ourselves about where we might be falling short. How effective are we at saving lives? How effective are we in making sure that we're limiting the suffering that so many people face? How effective are we at combating the poisonous narratives that too often surround migration and showcase rather the significant divisions rather than bringing people together and demonstrating how much more we can accomplish when we identify the real value that migrants are bringing into communities? And then how good are we really? And this is a question we have to ask ourselves all the time. I know it's a question you within governments ask yourselves all the time. How good are we at overcoming the silos and making sure that we are not stuck in the middle of a process fight, or whose logo goes on what material, or who gets the credit, or whose people are in the center, and instead recognizing that we have a common goal, that we spent hours and days and months and years building this common goal, and instead our job is to execute against that goal rather than to be the one that gets all the credit. But let me actually give a little credit, because I first want to acknowledge that we have a remarkable group of colleagues in this room from across the UN system, and we have a remarkable group of partners online. So whether you are a member state, whether you are from a sister UN agency, whether you're with another part of the network, we value you. You've been an important piece of the work we're doing, and you will be an important piece of the work that we need to do. So I've given you a little bit of the why we're all here, but if we're going to really do something hard, and that's our job here, we also talk about how. So I want to lay out a few things for you when we talk about the how. First, let's talk about what our member states are doing, how we're seeing the Global Compact implemented in real life. Then let's talk about the role of the UN, what we are doing, what we can do, what we have done, including what are the tools that we've made available and are available for all of you to support your governments in implementing the Global Compact. Then let's talk about the money and the resources that we need. And finally, what do we do? How do we collectively move the compact forward, move forward commitment, and frankly, move forward the action? So starting first with the member state action. Now, there's good news here. Member states have been translating the words of the compact into action across the world, and it's really been quite heartening. And if I could just take a moment to call out two of our leaders, Morocco and El Salvador. I see our PR here in the front, for the tremendous work that you're doing in order to drive forward action, to drive forward accountability, to drive forward a sense of purpose and a sense of urgency. We know that if the compact is going to have any meaning at all, we need to be focused on implementation. I was in Kenya just last month, and I got to be there to witness the launch of Kenya's National Implementation Plan for the GCM. Now, this was the first time that we had a country do this using the network's guidance. And, it's an extraordinary moment. It's a very comprehensive document. It has very specific action points, very specific steps that the government of Kenya intends to accomplish, and clear lines of accountability across the government. And it was done, frankly, in consultation with a wide range of stakeholders. So I'm very grateful to see Kenya in the room, to say thank you for your leadership, and to make sure that all of you know about this example, because it's a really good one to follow. But it's not just Kenya. We have championed countries like Bangladesh, El Salvador, Ghana, all who are working on plans that will put the GCM into on-the-ground action. We're also working with our member states such as Turkmenistan. Is Turkmenistan in the room? Do we have? Turkmenistan and CARICOM. And this is exciting, what's happening in the Caribbean, because we are aligning the Caribbean regional migration policy with the GCM commitments. So we are all in. We across the network, we at IOM, we as UN agencies and partners want to work with you to make sure that you can be as successful as possible in implementing the promise of migration, which has been laid out in the Global Compact for Migration. And we're really looking for those of you who are champions to be the stewards, right? To be the ambassadors, to put a little pressure on your neighboring countries, to demonstrate what good looks like and how we bring others to the table to deliver against the Global Compact. Earlier this year, Rabat hosted a cross-regional migration dialogue of champion countries. Next week, we're going to have a dialogue in Accra, which is going to bring together champions from Africa, the Arab states, the Americas, and Europe. And recently, we saw the first regional forum of champion countries in the Americas as part of the Regional Conference on Migration. So again, I want to say thank you to El Salvador and Morocco for becoming our first co-chairs of the champion countries, which is part of the collective effort to advance the GCM implementation. And I just want to acknowledge those of you who are in the room who've been around since the beginning, who were fighting, you know I'm looking at you, Ambassador San, who were fighting from the very beginning to make sure that we got this incredible document. But to recognize that, the document itself is not enough, right? We now have a collective commitment in order to execute against. So thank you to all of you who are part of those efforts and the tremendous work that you're doing. So that brings me to the UN. What's our role? Now, it's fantastic. Ultimately, this is about what states can do and state policy and state implementation. But we within the UN network are absolutely committed to making sure that you have the tools that you need to deliver. So we're working within the UN system to do the same. IOM and UNDP, we have been supported by the EU, so thank you to the EU, have been working with these regional networks that are meant to establish these multi-agency and multi-stakeholder facilitation teams. And to date, I'm really pleased to say there are 20 United Nations country teams which have held dedicated context-specific workshops that are helping to implement GCM into the structure, into the systems, into the plans, and into the programs. And more than 250 UN staff have attended. 17 more UN country teams have asked for a Migration Network Hub for this kind of support. Now, this is how we actually build migration into the UN's action around the world. Many of you, as member states, have asked me in the lunches, in the dinners, in the bilaterals, in the meetings that I have had in my capacity as the DG for IOM, how are you, IOM, working with other parts of the UN to make sure you are not duplicating resources, to make sure that you have significant impact and effect, and that we're integrating migration into the work we do around the world? And it's really here. This is where it starts. It's in the UN country team. So I want to call out the resident coordinators who are the ones to bring everybody to the table. Now, the resident coordinators have influence because they are the ones who hold the UN partners to account. They can make sure that we have a tremendous functioning of the GCM and tremendous commitment of the GCM. And here I want to call out, for example, the resident coordinator in Kenya, who drove UN engagement around the UN table to make sure we were delivering as the government of Kenya put together its own implementation plan. So when you ask me, how do we work together with our other partners, it's really through our UN country teams. It's really through the network that has been set up around the UN hubs around the world. And so I'm asking you as member states to make sure that you ask the question of our resident coordinators as well and make sure that we're all part of this effort. Now, it's not just the country team, right? So country team is how we make sure we have coordinated action to support our member states, but it's also the tools that we're building. So we have built a tremendous number of tools, and these are meant to make sure that you as national governments have what you need. You can see the best practices, you can see what works, you can pull from it what's applicable in your world. So let me just give you a couple of examples. The network provided guidance on a bilateral labor migration agreements. That was the subject of a joint regional training that was recently done in Zambia, which had 16 countries from across SADC. This is interesting because we are seeing more and more governments enter into bilateral agreements around migration, particularly when we're looking at labor mobility. So looking at this guidance will give you a window into how that works in some parts of the world. Last month in Honduras, the network's returns and reintegration checklist was the focus of peer learning exchange with governments, with civil society, and migrants who were coming back from North and Central America. We're also working with countries to look at alternatives to detention. It's not enough for us to say within the UN system across the network that you should not detain migrants. We need to give you examples of what can work. So we've had some peer learning exchanges with governments to discuss those best practices, and a recent one focused on how we end the detention of migrant children. Last month, we launched something called CLIMB, C-L-I-M-B. We like those acronyms in the UN. It's a database. It has almost 2,000 national, bilateral, and regional policy instruments relating to human mobility in the context of disasters, and looking at specifically human mobility when we have adverse effects of climate change and economic degradation. And just this last May, a GCM talk got us specific recommendations on how to include migrants in our health systems and how to provide them access to health services. Finally, the network workstream on migrant smuggling is the first collaborative interagency platform in the UN system that is dedicated to the issue of migrant smuggling. So I'm sharing this because I think sometimes when we work in our individual desks, in our individual agencies, in our individual missions, we don't recognize the wealth of information, the wealth of examples, best practices, and tools that are being developed around the world right now that are available for your government to tap into, to figure out what what are the ways that we can implement the Global Compact for migration? And we have really great examples of where the interagency community is coming together. So ICRC, IFRC, IOM, UNHCR, we're leading an effort to develop specifics so that we can cooperate with each other to find missing migrants and to provide humanitarian assistance to migrants in distress. We have another work stream that's headed jointly by DESA and IOM, which is focused on how do we meet the needs of member states and how do we avoid duplicating efforts. It's funny, we now have a work stream that's focused on non-duplicating efforts, but frankly, in the context of which so many people are working across the space, it's key to make sure that we're using our resources effectively and that we're building on existing frameworks. And ultimately, it's coming from you all. It's coming from our member states who are asking us to make sure we're prioritizing the saving of lives, the protection of lives. But ultimately, you are also going to be our judges. Are we providing information that is relevant? Can you use it? Are you seeing it play out? Is it reflected in the way you do business? And if we're not meeting the mark, we want to hear it from you, because there is a tremendous amount of work that is going into this. But if it's not being used, then it's a waste of time. So the Global Compact calls for a capacity building mechanism. The thing we're very excited about is that we have this migration network hub. Now, this is where you can go to find most of the things I've just talked about today. If you're looking for information on how to combat migrant smuggling, on how to integrate migrants into your healthcare system, on how to create alternatives to detention, this is the resource you want to go to. It has an on-demand function. It has ways for you to target specific policy areas where you're interested in getting information and feedback. It's multilingual, so the states and the stakeholders can work together on solutions. And when you have content that you think is particularly relevant, you can upload it and share it, and others can benefit from what you're doing, from what you're learning. Now, right now, it has more than 1,600 relevant resources and more than 270 examples of GCM implementation worldwide. So the risk here is not that we're not doing the work. The risk here is that the work we're doing is not hitting as many people as it can hit for it to be effective. So another piece that is very, very important in order to ensure that we get implementation of the Compact is the Migration Multi-Partner Trust Fund. So yesterday, I had the honor to chair for the first time the Fund Steering Committee. And I just, this is money. So I want you to pay attention to this, right? This is the money to help you implement the objectives of a Global Compact for migration. To date, 21 joint programs that have covered all continents and have contributed to all the GCM objectives have been launched. And some are nearing completion, so we're beginning to see those results. And the fund can do a lot more. I mean, in order to get resources from the fund, you have to have a joint proposal. So this is important. Again, asking you as member states to help us to be accountable for what you've asked us to do. Work together, avoid duplication of resources, bring the best of what your agency offers to the table. It's there with the fund that we can do it. We are prioritizing the links between climate change and migration, and we've demonstrated its flexibility to adapt the fund to emerging needs. And we know that climate change is going to be right there in the center of it. Now, this is where I shift to money, because when we talk about a fund, obviously the fund needs to be resourced. Now, I'm really excited to say we set ourselves a $12 million or $20 million goal for this year, which, by the way, is more than double what was the goal last year. And we are very, very close to meeting it, with contributions of some key governments in the room, some of which I'm not yet at liberty to say. No, okay, but we see you, and we're grateful. We are now about $1 million short of hitting our goal. And I am determined I will host bake sales or car washes. I ask you to search your couch cushions for change. We can make the $20 million goal, no question, by the end of this year, but we need you, right? So go back and ask. And I want to say something really important about this particular fund, because it is not a traditional donor-only fund. What's remarkable about this fund is that we now have 21 contributors from every single continent, right? Well, every single continent where we have a mission, not Antarctica.
Not Antarctica.
Okay. But we're working on that. But this is one of the most diverse funds that exists. It is one of the most diverse that has all UN-pulled funding instruments, and that's because of all of you. So I'm going to do a little public TV moment. I don't know if you guys have these moments in your countries. In my country, we have fundraising moments for public television. It's going to be that, where I say to you, we can get there. We're so close. We have operators on hand to take your call, right? So Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let's meet that $20 million mark. We can do it. We can do it. We are so close to getting there. It's almost Christmas time. Tomorrow we have what we call Black Friday. That is a day of giving. So instead of going to Amazon, let me encourage you to go to our governments and ask everybody to provide a little bit for this fund. So we have enabled, across the board, we have raised $50 million to date. So that's exciting. This fund has only been around for 3 years. So that's good. I mean, that shows the interest. But if we really want to see results, we all know that forcing UN agencies, forcing countries to work together to deliver against the compact and providing the resources to do it is the way to do it. So I'm hoping by the end, certainly before Christmas, that I will get commitments from enough people in this room to meet that $20 million mark for this year, and that you will then see the results of that investment in the years to come. So, last thing, next steps. Go ask for more money, number one. But number two is your engagement. It's your consistent, your regular input from all of you in the room, all of you online, all the stakeholders who are part of our commitment as a global community, states, governments, civil society, international organizations, to deliver on the promise that's contained in the compact. It's not a process that's just starting now. You know that. It is something that has been ongoing, and we're learning along the way. We're learning what works. We're learning how to adjust. We're learning how to move faster and be more impactful. Last year, 46 stakeholders from all regions, young people, migrants themselves, grassroots actors, they participated in the International Migration Review Forum. And we need their voices. We have heard from them a strong interest, a hunger to be involved in the implementation of the Global Compact. I'll tell you, I have heard over the course of this last year from folks around the world, they want to be part of what we're doing. They want to implement wherever they are, at whatever level they're working, they want to be part of this very exciting moment. So that's why I'm asking for you to be involved. The compact really only works if we're all in it together. It doesn't work if it's just an instrument of IOM. It doesn't work if it's just an instrument of donor states. It doesn't work if it's just an instrument of certain parts of the world. It only works if we get the champions to be the advocates, if we get everyone in the room to contribute to the funding, if we get states to work together to submit joint proposals, if we get implementation plans at the national level. At every single angle, we need to be working on this issue, because that's actually how we're going to get it done. And ultimately, it's all about the people, right? We know that that's the driver. That's why we're doing it. And, you know, this is something that in the job that I have, I'm very, very, very fortunate to hear from many, many people. Now, I hear about the challenges that people face who are on the move, who are being forced to move, who feel like they have no options but to move. But I also hear from people about tremendous optimism. I mean, I find it remarkable that you can go to a camp of displaced people in some of the hardest places in the world, and you'll still find moments of joy and moments of optimism. You'll still find people who have ideas and hopes and dreams for their future. And our job is to empower them, right? Our job is to fight against the smugglers at whose hands over 5,000 migrants have died or have gone missing. Our job is to move from the death and the exploitation of people, particularly vulnerable people, and move toward the empowerment of people. So Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, friends, this is the start of my work as the coordinator of this network, but it is not the start of our work as this community who's focused on the Global Compact for Migration. But I can promise you 100% that I am all in, that I am going to hold us all accountable, that I'm going to bring my own energy, my personal attention, and a little bit of arm twisting and cajoling of all of you so that we all do the same in order that we can implement the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. So with that, I thank you and I welcome your comments.
Thank you very much indeed, Director General. As promised or threatened, there is now going to be, I always get nervous, yes, there will be a very short video before we open the floor for comments, please.
Since 2019, the network has brought together the UN, states, and migration stakeholders to give life to the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration, addressing priorities such as climate change's impact on migration, alternatives to immigration detention, labor migration, access to services, returns, and sustainable reintegration. The network promotes the sharing of good practices and hosts an expanding GCM-related information repository on the Migration Network Hub. With over 30 champion countries and the Pledging Initiative, the network fosters commitments to implement the GCM globally. Assisted by the network, the 2022 International Migration Review Forum resulted in a progress declaration calling for more to be done to save migrants' lives and gauge how states implement the compact. 20 joint programs, implemented by more than 300 partners, cover all regions and all GCM objectives. Numerous countries are developing plans for actioning the GCM. More than 250 UN staff mobilized to take this forward. 80+ partners of the network's 14 work streams developed over 20 tools. More than 70 dialogues globally fostered unified solutions. Let's shape the future of migration together.
Thank you for your attention. That will be out in all major cinemas from the week before Christmas. We now will take some interventions from the floor. As I said, also the virtual floor. Several of you, when registering, indicated your interest in so doing, and we have taken your names, and I'll be calling upon you shortly. If you haven't already indicated but do wish to take the floor, please do just register that in the chat function if online, or place your nameplate on its side, as is the normal tradition. And then finally, as is the tradition in the network, we will be interspersing statements from member states with those of stakeholders so that we have an inclusive conversation. With all that out of the way, I'd like to first give the floor to the permanent representative of El Salvador, please.
Thank you, Director General Amy Pope, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, international organizations and civil society representatives. El Salvador is pleased to deliver this statement on behalf of the GCM 34 champions countries. We welcome Ms. Amy Pope to her first meeting as coordinator of the UN Network on Migration, and look forward to working closely on the full implementation of the Global Compact, assuring our continued support to her and all relevant stakeholders on our joint effort to foster safe, orderly, and regular migration. We thank you for the valuable information provided during this briefing, recognizing the world is facing complex challenges to human mobility, such as climate change, political and economic crisis, armed conflicts, social inequality, organized crime, among others, which are causing a significant increase of migrants around the world every year. Most of them risking their lives through irregular pathways to seek a better future elsewhere. Therefore, we highlight the need for urgent action to mitigate and develop comprehensive solutions for the adverse drivers and structural factors that hinder people from building and maintaining sustainable livelihoods in their countries of origin through a human-centered approach in accordance with the 23 objectives contained in the GCM. We support the vision of the UN network and its coordinator, which is in line with the priorities put forward by the first co-chairmanship of the GCM Champions Countries Initiative, led by El Salvador and Morocco, on fostering activities to address the adverse effects of climate change, advocating for the regular pathway, promoting balanced narratives, reinforcing our efforts to provide and exchange comprehensive information on migration-related aspects, improving our participation in multilateral spaces, and advocating for the more countries to join efforts to unlock the potential of safe, orderly, and regular migration, as well as to overcome its challenges. The GCM is a fundamental instrument for addressing international migration in a comprehensive and human manner, enriching and shaping our common understanding of this complex phenomenon through the leadership, partnership, advocacy, and international cooperation. We exchange our experience in responding to the needs of migrants in situations of vulnerabilities, regardless of their migration status, and examine how to create conditions that allow communities and individuals to live in safety and dignity, while empowering them to become full members of our societies, highlighting the positive contributions and promoting inclusion and social cohesion. The Champions Countries Initiative seeks to deepen member states' engagement for the effective implementation of the GCM and to promote inclusive and substantive discussion for its revision at regional and global levels. We believe that the establishment of the UN Network on Migration allows the member states, the United Nations, and other relevant stakeholders to advance in the GCM's vision and its 23 objectives, in line with the 2030 Agenda, prioritizing the human rights and well-being of migrants, their families, and their communities in countries of destination, transit, and origin. As champion countries, we are dedicated to delivering together on common objectives under the initiative to benefit the effective implementation of the GCM, preserving the solidarity, flexibility, and collaborative nature of the group, and recognizing the cross-cutting nature of the migration. Therefore, we have elaborated a work plan as a living document which incorporates all the concrete actions we develop with the support of the network, including the preparation of the international and regional review forums, the promotion of the GCM talks on relevant migration topics, the use of network tools, and the capacity building mechanism, as well as the coordination for upcoming network events which generate new ideas and meaningful action for advancing safe, orderly, and regular migration. We recognize there is a continuous need for international efforts to strengthen our knowledge and analysis of migration information about its benefits and challenges. To this end, it is crucial to foster strong engagement with external partners, including migrants, diaspora, civil society, local authorities and communities, the private sector, academia, and other relevant stakeholders at global, regional, and national levels. Together, we can reduce the risk and vulnerabilities migrants face at different stages of human mobility, respecting, protecting, and fulfilling their human rights, especially the world's most vulnerable. We also extend our appreciation to the UN Network on Migration, its coordinator and the Secretariat for supporting member countries and relevant stakeholders in our work to improve the condition of the migrants and their families, as well as promoting best practices and exchange of experience to advance our commitments to the Compact. We reiterate our trust in the work of the UN Network on Migration to achieve our common objectives and solidify the global compact. We keep firm in our leading role to raise our voices in ensuring and preserving the rights, welfare, and security of all migrants, doing our utmost effort to advance in the implementation of the GCM. Finally, we would like to express our warm welcome to Sierra Leone as the new GCM champion countries, and Excellency, and invite other member states to join us in this work. Thank you so much.
Well, by a remarkable coincidence, next on my list of interventions is indeed the permanent representative of Sierra Leone. I would like to then indicate following him, I have the representative of Pakistan and then the representative of the Philippines. But please, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you for arranging that coincidence. And thank you to my colleague for the very kind welcome. Thank you. Madam Director General and now Coordinator, Excellencies and distinguished delegates, Sierra Leone aligns itself with the statement delivered by El Salvador just now on behalf of the GCM 34 champion countries, which we joined as the 34th member state. We are excited to join this important initiative and look forward to continue to work with the IOM and the UN Network on Migration in promoting the objectives of the Global Compact. I'll also like to join my colleague in welcoming Ms. Amy Pope as coordinator of the UN Network on Migration and thank her for the very informative briefing. Sierra Leone believes that the essence of the GCM lies in its collective commitment to enhancing collaboration on international migration based on a shared vision, collective responsibilities, and a mutual recognition that no government can single-handedly address migration's complexities. This serves as a powerful voice to advocate and foster the implementation of the GCM and contribute to building a positive migration governance framework for the country. We are excited about the collective insights, lessons learned, and promising practices that the champions offer. The Republic of Sierra Leone believes that we are grateful for we are very grateful for the fruitful engagements with IOM as chair of the UN Network on Migration worldwide. We have, as a country, benefited immensely from the cooperation with IOM. We would like to proudly announce, for example, the commitment of IOM in implementation of the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration as a GCM country by funding 3 projects, related projects in Sierra Leone from the IDF funding relating to the mitigating the effects of climate change, but also on youth, unemployed youth empowerment. The bulk, almost 100% of all our irregular migrants are very youthful people. And Sierra Leone also commends IOM, the country office in Sierra Leone, for its efforts in supporting assistance, voluntary returns and reintegration activities in Sierra Leone. We are among the top 5 countries in West Africa with the highest number of voluntary returns, 63% of whom are coming from Niger, which itself is in a bad way currently. In 2003, that is this year, IOM supported the return of 1,262 stranded migrants, 26% of them female and 74% male, including 135 cases of trafficking. this is a very valuable intervention in the part of IOM. We didn't have the resources to fly those folks out, and we were getting a lot of pressure from them. With the support of IOM, the government organized the Mano River Union. Mano River Union is four constant neighboring countries in West Africa, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea, and Cote d'Ivoire, within the ECOWAS region, holding a high-level ECOWAS conference on human trafficking and the ongoing finalization of the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Action Plan. Sierra Leone is very thankful for the support from IOM with respect to integrated border governance, including the deployment of migration information and data analysis system. I'm not making this up. While the DG spoke, the coordinator spoke, it was actually highlighted as one of the key things that this network is doing and IOM is doing. As newcomers through the GCM Champion Initiative, Sierra Leone looks forward to accelerating the GCM implementation in the country and to reinforce intergovernmental coordination structures. In fact, we are in discussion with the IOM team in Sierra Leone for technical support to establishing a regional GCM coordination mechanism, a national GCM implementation plan, and the upcoming 2024 national GCM review, which will feed into the regional and continental reviews. I thank you all, and I thank you for welcoming me into the network. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I now give the floor to the representative from Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellencies, dear colleagues, Madam Director General, happy Thanksgiving. At the outset, we congratulate you, Madam, on assuming the responsibilities of the Director General and as well as coordinator of the UN Network on Migration. We are confident that under your leadership, the IOM would be able to make greater strides in promoting safe, orderly, and regular migration as a vector of sustainable development and global prosperity. As a country of origin, transit, and destination, Pakistan appreciates IOM's role and its activities, not only in the field of migration, but also as a credible partner in humanitarian operations. Madam Director General, we are in strong agreement with your point that you made at the beginning of your remarks, that human rights and dignity is at the heart of your work. As a growing nexus of conflict, climate and health emergencies continue, it presents a new face of challenges to the world of migration and mobility. And this requires multidimensional and concerted global efforts and partnerships. And that's where the network becomes very important. To ensure that migration yields positive dividends for both countries of origin and destination, the Global Compact serves as a practical framework for all countries. We echo the point that promotion of regular and orderly migration should continue to be anchored in global development policy agenda. As the current chair of the Abu Dhabi Dialogue among Asian labor sending and receiving countries, Pakistan is clearly working with regional countries in this area. Furthermore, the climate change is increasingly presenting the new dimension of human mobility challenges. Several studies have shown how climate-related events could influence socioeconomic factors and might drive people to cross international borders. It is therefore critical for IOM to work with member states to develop a holistic response to mobility in the context of climate change. The situation also requires innovative approaches, such as expansion of complementary legal pathways, as well as global investment to support climate-resilient development in countries at risk. We have noted the idea of mutual learning of the best practices that was made, and we will definitely have a close look at the Migration Network Hub. The 23 objectives of the GCM are a good guide to realize the promise of migration in all its dimensions, and the Director General has so succinctly and ably summed it up today in her remarks: every person matters. We look forward to a constructive engagement with the IOM and all member states in ensuring a successful rollout of the GCM at national, regional, and global levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Before I hand the floor to the permanent representative of the Philippines, after his intervention, I suggest we hear from a couple of stakeholders, and I would just like to put on notice the Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism will be joining us online, followed then by the Quaker UN office, and then we'll revert to member states. But please, sir, the floor is yours from the Philippines.
Thank you very much, John. There is indeed a lot to be thankful for in this Thanksgiving Day. We're thankful that Amy's taken on many hats now and brings just the same amount of high-level energy into every task and position that she assumes. We're very grateful and thankful for that. Of course, for the hard work also of the Secretariat. Both the network and the coordinator has our full support, especially as we start to focus on our upcoming regional reviews. In this context, in terms of the Asia Pacific, where many are countries of origin, and not just in terms of labor, but also in terms of displacement caused by climate change, we intend to touch upon many issues to identify the challenges and solutions, including being ready for the next pandemic, because one of our experiences of migration is during the pandemic, we woke up one day and all our nurses were gone. And not just nurses, but healthcare workers, therapists, X-ray technicians, medical technicians, pharmacists. It was a big problem. We're trying to solve it on our own and through the pandemic treaty, but it's one of those issues that we feel that one day we have to probably address. Particular ideas we identified for our regional review as combating trafficking in persons, enhancing access to regular and legal pathways, fair and ethical recruitment, eliminating wage theft, and other pertinent issues. So we look forward to bringing into this regional review the perspectives of the Colombo process with the intent of advocating for humane employment and labor conditions for migrants. We highlight the importance of the Migration Multi-Partner Trust Fund and thank everyone for their contribution. And yes, we do want the fund to succeed, even if we have to dig into our couches for the change or sell lemonade on the street. But we are encouraged by the response by many countries, even from G77, who believe in the process, and although have scant resources, are able to contribute, and we're very grateful for that. As a donor and recipient, the Philippines see the value of the fund that supports practical initiatives geared towards the implementation of GCM. It is in this regard that we will continue to support the fund through voluntary contributions and hope other stakeholders do the same. And I'd also like to join Rina Salvador in welcoming Sierra Leone to our happy little group. And I think your presence, sir, will certainly be just listening to you now. And I believe you will be moving forward quite determinedly. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. I hope technology now allows for Paddy Sianga-Knudsen to join us from the Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism. Paddy, the floor is yours. We'll come back to that when we can figure out what the glitch is. But if it's not disrupting her rhythm, if I can turn to Laurel Townhead of the Quaker UN office, please.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Director General, for this briefing and welcome as coordinator of the network. I believe that the role of the network and therefore the role of the Secretariat and you as coordinator is to implement the GCM through operational guidance and support to states, increased collaboration and coherence amongst the UN family, and being a steward of the standards of those political and legal agreements that member states have made, especially those with dignity and rights at their core, as you've spoken about today. And we wish you courage and tenacity as you take on these functions. A change of leadership contains opportunity and risk, and my hope is that you'll take the opportunity to build on and learn from what the network, enabled by its secretariat, has done to date, and use this to mitigate the risk of apathy and antipathy towards the GCM and its follow-up architecture, which we see as really valuable tools in upholding the dignity and rights of all people, regardless of their migration status, and something that I would hope unites all of us in this room, part of that common goal of which you've spoken today. 2 points I'd like to touch on today, drawing on your helpful update. One is around migrant expertise and experience, and one is around humanitarian assistance and missing migrants. So on the voices, or the empowerment, as I think you importantly referred to it as, we see the regional reviews, which have been referred to by the co-chair of the Champions and others from the floor, as one of the key routes in which we can look at improving the space for migrant participation. These reviews seek to explore regional migration dynamics, and they must do so informed by migrant expertise and experience in everything from shaping the agenda of the meetings to shaping the regional agendas for strengthened cooperation, which the reviews will hopefully achieve. And for those who are interested in working together on this, we have a briefing with some specific proposals on how that could be enabled. On the Progress Declaration mandated action on humanitarian assistance and missing migrants, we really welcome the importance that you're placing on ending loss of life, on disappearances and other human rights violations at borders, including through the very early joint statement that you made on the 10th anniversary of the Lampedusa tragedy. The mandate from the IMRF Progress Declaration must lead to recommendations that are not only actionable, but which are actioned, and we'll need all parties to engage in the formulation and, crucially, in the follow-up of these recommendations. They cannot be recommendations which sit on the page alone. Previously, we've suggested a high-level panel on deaths in transit, and we continue to advocate for a Human Rights Council investigative mechanism. So my first question for you is, what do you think will ensure that the recommendations live beyond the Secretary-General's report and bring us into the second IMRF with change that we can actually be proud of? These are amongst the many areas of migration governance where we see a real value add from the network, and a value add that we think is increasingly recognised by states, by stakeholders and by UN entities, examples of which you've evidenced throughout your presentation today. So much of what I say now, or would say in any conversation with you, would be about our asks and what we want, but I'm also interested in your asks and what you need in order to take on this role. And so as coordinator, what do you want from civil society to support you in reaching the network's potential in upholding the dignity of migrants, regardless of their status? And as coordinator, what do you need from member states to consolidate the network's successes, grow these further, and resource a secretariat that can deliver on what member states have asked of it and what you are committed to? Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you. Is Paddy online? Yes. So now, hopefully, we can turn to Paddy Sianga Knudsen. Please.
Apologies. Jonathan, just let me know if can you hear me? Am I audible enough?
We can indeed hear you, yes.
Okay, fantastic. I will blame it on the internet. Just to say thank you again and congratulations to Director General Amy Pope on hosting your first briefing as coordinator. We are really glad to have you in the room here with us, and I think that we're feeling some of the energy that we have felt in previous engagements with you coming into your election phase. And I think we also very encouraged to see from the first from the outline of your briefing today that people first, that focus on people first. And I think as civil society, this stands out very encouraging for us. I think what is also encouraging for us is to sort of see this growth of the Secretariat. We have really been, waiting for a solid work around the Secretariat, which has been great. And now we really are in that, in the last minutes of the last decade, as one would say, in terms of actions that need to be taken up. And we continue to see how our world is being impacted by different crises around the world, really asking us to step up some of the efforts that we have. It was also very encouraging, and we wanted to just call upon this in terms of pooling up resources. And for us, maybe from the civil society space and from the academia space, as JRFDT, we work very closely with the network and also very active in some of the work streams around indicators, as well as remittances and diaspora. And for us, this is where we also see the efforts that have to go into pulling these efforts and really pulling resources and efforts of all actors on the table from a multi-stakeholder approach, and really allowing them to, and finding, I think, models. Maybe this is another second call I would make to member states who are in the room, but also to the network itself, to say that there is indeed a need for more flexible ways to work with self-mobilized and allowing civil society actors and non-state actors to be able to support the very important work that's behind the Global Compact on Migration. We're very encouraged also with efforts that we see of Global South countries really stepping up. Congratulations once again to Sierra Leone for being the 34th champion country. I think this is very important for us, and that's coming from African diaspora and from African civil society. It's always very encouraging, and we call upon member states as well as the UN network to look into the space for more engagement with civil society on this. And just an end on the monitoring, I think for us, it still stands out. There's very impressive work that has gone in. It was very interesting to see some of the results that you've also been able to share. And we look forward to a monitoring that is rigorous, a monitoring that really speaks to the way you started off your speech, which was really, once again, focusing on the impact on people first. Thank you so much, and hoping you a good deliberation for the afternoon.
Thank you very much, Paddy, for joining us. We will now return to interventions from member states. The list that I have before me is as follows: representatives from Denmark, Bangladesh, Morocco, Ethiopia, and El Salvador. And I now see Germany, who reminded me to ask you to put up your nameplates if you do wish to take the floor. So I add to that list Germany, Ghana, and the representative from the United Kingdom, and then the European Union. All of which is to say, I will break those up with stakeholder interventions. We are in our last hour, so if you could keep your comments to a crisp 2 minutes max, and that would allow the Director General to respond, because she has a hard deadline of 3:30. So we will start with Denmark, please. Apologies. Sometimes this list system goes a bit wrong. Bangladesh, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, good afternoon. We align with the statement delivered by El Salvador on behalf of GCM champion countries. Bangladesh warmly welcome Madam Ms. Amy Pope to her first meeting to this network. Bangladesh, a champion country for GCM implementation, remains committed to a rule-based international migration framework, taking a 360-degree approach to promoting safe, orderly, and regular migration. Last year, we launched Bangladesh Migration Compact Task Force to monitor and coordinate the GCM implementation. We are closely working under Bangladesh UN Network on Migration to develop a roadmap for implementation of the GCM. Bangladesh attaches high importance to the skill development of migrant workers. We have undertaken different skilling and upskilling training programs for our migrant workers. We made pre-departure training mandatory for all outgoing migrant workers. We also introduced language training for our migrant workers. Bangladesh has introduced smart cards for all overseas workers to facilitate their mobility, stay, and rights, and facilitate both in Bangladesh and in their destination countries. We have also taken proactive role in promoting faster, safer, and cheaper transfer of remittances. Our government announced a 5% cash incentive to all remitters to encourage the orderly remittance inflow. Bangladesh has formed a fund for rehabilitation and re-employment of jobless migrant workers who have returned home after losing their jobs overseas. The affected Bangladeshi workers and their family members are given humanitarian assistance, including financial aid under the Social Safety Network program. Bangladesh has recently introduced universal pension scheme, and migrant workers have been included in this scheme. Mr. Moderator, Continuous vulnerability of migrants have reminded us the necessity of right-based migration governance through a whole of a society approach. We feel that despite some global initiatives in recent years, there are gaps in the governance of labor migration. Some key elements to fill the gaps are lack of cooperation between sending and destination countries, mostly when comes the question of private sector cooperation. Second, it is a matter of concern that the labor migration, with regard to labor migration, that there are serious lack of sufficient legal frameworks in the destination countries to protect the rights of migrants, including their life, livelihood, and health. We believe network would work actively, in particular with the destination countries, to promote migrants' protection. We think a constant civil society drive is also important. Network and its members organizations, individually and collectively, need to work to address these elements, among others, with the scope of GCM objective and the thematic priorities of the work plan of the network and beyond where it is needed. Bangladesh should remain ready to render full cooperation to the network to this end. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I now turn to the representative of Morocco.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, dear DG, for this extensive and comprehensive presentation. Actually, the first one as the new network coordinator. It is for us promising to see how you envision GCM further implementation. We are also supportive of the concrete actions launched recently with the important support of the network. In that sense, we wish to thank you and extend our support to you and to the network that we consider a pertinent tool for the implementation of the GCM. We also wish to warmly welcome the Sierra Leone within the GCM Champion Countries initiative. And you know and you can stay assured that Morocco will continue playing a leadership role together with fellow champions. As contributor to the success of the GCM, Morocco has also decided to donate for the first time ever to the MPTF Trust Fund this year in February 2023. In this respect, we are quite delighted to have announced this contribution alongside Germany. This initiative is intended to be a strong political message as well of cooperation and successful multilateralism across region. With this contribution, Morocco is further crystallizing its commitments in deeds, actually. We're also committed to making the first IMRF a success, and for that we have convened a ministerial meeting with all champions globally to gather support and momentum for the GCM. And the same efforts are ongoing for the regional reviews that are upcoming, and for which we participate in 2 reviews, actually, the African and Arab one. We do feel that they're important tools in view of the next SG report scheduled in 2024. We were also pleased to organize the first cross-regional meeting of the champions earlier this year in Rabat with all Africa, MENA, and Europe champions. And we very much look forward to participating to the upcoming one in Accra next week. And thank you again, and welcome as the new coordinator.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the representative of Ethiopia.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Madam Coordinator. Happy Thanksgiving Day. And I want to also join others in commending the Director General for your briefing on the work of the UN Network on Migration. Madam Coordinator, Ethiopia aligns itself with the statement delivered by El Salvador on behalf of the GCM champion countries. Ethiopia is very committed for implementation of GCM, and we have achieved most of its objectives. Although the challenges are increasing, we have undertaken several measures in preventing human trafficking, cross-border smuggling, and irregular migrations. At national level, in cooperation with IGAD, we have conducted annual National Partnership Coalition meeting to assess implementation of the GCM and address the challenges related with it. We have also conducted regular and inclusive reviews of progress at the national level in cooperation with IOM. At sub-regional level, we have also hosted the Ministerial Conference on Labor, Employment and Labor Migration of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which is IGAD, which reviewed the progress made since the signing of the Djibouti Declaration on Labor, Employment and Labor Migration in the IGAD region. As a current chair, we also hosted the Regional Ministerial Forum on Migration, which promotes establishing regional common approach to make migration safe, regular, and orderly. A united approach on safe, regular, and orderly labor migration is important to foster labor mobility and protect the fundamental rights, the fundamental human, labor, and social rights of migrant workers within and from the continent. We believe that regional mechanisms could play critical roles in tackling the challenge related with migration governance. Madam Coordinator, people have always moved in the context of the environment. However, the impacts of climate change on human mobility are growing. In Ethiopia, climate change is affecting many and forcing people to leave their homes. Most of the migration is within the country. We recognize that it's important to address displacement caused by environmental degradation and adverse impacts of climate change through disaster risk reduction policies and strategies. Hence, we would like to underline that IOM should further expand its support through specific projects aimed at mitigating the impacts of climate change to achieve sustainable development goals relating to reducing climate-related displacement. We also recognize positive impacts of some migration multi-partner trust fund. We have submitted projects with the support of the UN network. We have some ongoing finance projects, and we would like to thank IOM and partners for their support. Finally, Madam Coordinator, at the continental level, we have participated in dialogues organized by UN Network on Migration that created a momentum of cooperation. We believe those activities have to be continued. As a GCM champion country, we support the work of the UN Network and its coordinator, which is in line with the priorities of my country. And we welcome Sierra Leone as a new champion countries. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, before I hand the floor to the permanent representative of El Salvador, I think will speak in her national capacity. If anyone is thinking I'm playing favorites by giving her the floor twice, I would just like to make a few announcements about next colleagues on the list. El Salvador will be followed by the representative of the European Union. I will then turn to stakeholder colleagues. Firstly, Timur Schmidt from the platform on disaster displacement, followed online by Ariane Sankrajka of the Migration, Youth and Children's platform. And we will then return to member states, Germany, Ghana, UK and Malawi. Again, if we could all collectively be aware of the time. Thank you very much. So with that, over to the permanent representative of El Salvador.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. I apologize for taking the floor once again. As our national capacity, I would like to add some comments. And first of all, we thank you, Madam Director General, for this very comprehensive briefing, and happy Thanksgiving as well from our side. Now allow me to bring a little bit Spanish to this meeting para abordar un poquito acerca, y muy brevemente, Jonathan, lo prometo, acerca del esfuerzo tan titánico que hemos hecho como país, porque ser
we've done as a country, because being a champion country in implementing the GCM is a huge responsibility, politically speaking, but also to generate, on the field, public policies, resources, and so on. And the specific case of El Salvador, there's a change in paradigm which happened in 2019. We concentrated in a specific aspect to transform human mobility in El Salvador. In specific topics as a big investment in communities to minimize the factors that make people migrate, also public policy in mobility, which was a success. That's very important. And then to establish regular alternatives so that migration happens in a safe, orderly, and regular way. And in this process, we had a big commitment at the national level with all our capacity, especially with the accompaniment of our partners as IOM, and also it was good to get the support via a project of Alliances for Migration. I would like to welcome the network, the European Union and IOM, because this project was the catalyst for us that allows to generate all the activities and to facilitate the consultation process and incorporating as well all factors and all key actors at the national level. Under this umbrella, we are advancing in the implementation of the GCM, bearing in mind and having all the key stakeholders on board. That's fundamental for us, and that's what explains the success that we had in reducing irregular migration flows. And I would like to thank the IOM and the agencies for being with us, with El Salvador, so that now we have the possibility to explain the success story and to appear in a good position in the reports by the coordinator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now turn to the representative of the European Union, please.
Thank you, Jonathan. I speak on behalf of the European Union institutions and would like to welcome DG Amy Pope in her role as the network coordinator. I will develop first on the upcoming regional reviews. For these reviews, we propose to cover all GCM objectives with due attention to the comprehensive and balanced approach to migration. In our view, attention will need to be paid to regional specificities, methodologically focusing on key issues of importance in each regional context. From EU side, the 5 key topics and objectives we propose for the UNEC region would be first, inclusion and social cohesion, so objective 16. Second, counter-smuggling, objective 9 of GCM. Third, safe lives, that's objective 8. Regular pathways, objective 5. And then last, dignified return and reintegration, objective 21. On the regional perspective, we can highlight how the European Union developed a really common system of migration and asylum management in order to structure the capacity to address both intra-regional and inter-regional flows and challenges. The Pact on Asylum and Migration, on the adoption of which we actively work right now, is planned to further reinforce this system. We look forward to a balanced next report of the Secretary General following the regional reviews. Reflecting on the joint briefing of yesterday by DG Amy Pope and the High Commissioner for Refugees, Grandi, we welcome bringing the 2 compacts closer together. A comprehensive and route-based approach to migration management is needed to address mixed movements in a fair and efficient way. We want to remind that human rights need to be guaranteed independently from the status. At the same time, addressing in a joint way both asylum and migration policies allows us to promote regular migration, counter trafficking and smuggling, and ensure credibility to the application of 1951 Geneva Convention. On GCM indicators, which is one of the current work streams, although we support the idea of building them on existing and universally accepted indicators, which include also the GCR indicator framework, we want to stress that they need to be linked to the Global Compact on Migration, covering all the GCM objectives in a balanced manner. Moreover, to provide a useful tool, they should differentiate between regular and irregular migrants, especially when it comes to those indicators that are linked to the provision of services. Last but not least, we want to point out the importance of having a gendered approach in the implementation and subsequent evaluation of the Global Compact on Migration. This should guide us both in policy planning, data collection, and in the review of our action, always reminding that women and girls, who constitute a giant share of the migrant population, face incredibly heightened risks of victimization. And that's why when Director General, when you refer to migrant as her, this brings also a strong message and reminds us that you will have the gendered approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now turn to Timo Schmidt of the Platform on Disaster Displacement, please.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And I speak within my capacity of the PDD Secretariat. And congratulations to DG Amy Pope for a new role as the network coordinator. And thank you very much for this comprehensive briefing. I also want to congratulate the network on all the successes achieved that were presented today. And really want to just present 2 points. One is that the GCM regional reviews are coming up, and we do really hope that the priorities that have also been spelled out by you, Director General, on climate change, human mobility, and disasters will be featured strongly in the reviews. And aligned with that, also to hope to see those elements being covered in the indicators frameworks that are being developed at the moment. And we also want to take that moment to thank the work stream on the indicators for all the efforts done so far in this direction, and just offer our support to continue working on that, in view of all the work that has went into the GCM at the time when it was negotiated, particularly around Objectives 2 and Objective 5 on regular pathways. And my second point is really that we had the pleasure to work with the network, particularly on the climate database, which you've mentioned as well. And just to point out again how grateful we are for all the work that's went into that. And it's really a cross-cutting database that touches on a variety of policy processes. The point of policy coherence really strikes me there as an important one. So within your vision of future work of the IOM and the network, I'd just like to ask how that element of policy coherence, also with a view towards the GRF, the COP, and all the other important policy events coming up, how that fits in there in a complementary way. So with that, thank you so much again, and best of luck also from our side.
Thank you very much. Now, hopefully, online, we can turn to Arian Sangrajka of the Migration, Youth and Children's Platform. Please.
Thank you, Jonathan, and good afternoon, Director General Pope, Excellencies and colleagues. My name is Arian Sangrajka, and I'm part of the executive team and GCM lead for the Migration and Youth and Children's Platform, with the migration constituency of the Major Group for Children and Youth, the UN General Assembly mandated space for young people in UN processes. I want to start by welcoming the Director General to her position as coordinator of the network, and hope to work with her and colleagues further to strengthen the voices of youth and migration policy processes. We remain wholeheartedly committed to the work of the UN Network on Migration as a member of the various work streams, such as those on ATD, smuggling of migrants, climate mobility, and the co-lead of the health work stream. The voices of youth have never been more important on these intersectional global issues, and I personally thank the network and partners for recognizing youth voices in these spaces by working with us on the first ever youth consultation to end child immigration detention in May of this year. As we look ahead, we are eager to work with member states, IOM and partners and colleagues to continue strengthening youth inclusion and participation across the various areas of the network's work plan to implement the GCM objectives. Over the coming months, MyCP will be focusing our efforts on the GCM regional review processes by engaging youth and grassroots to effectively contribute to the network and regional economic commission's planned activities to promote the GCM objectives at a regional level. MyCP will be producing a comprehensive policy brief for every region to bring attention to youth priorities and will include youth recommendations to member states on certain policy issues. Following consultations with grassroots youth and migrants, we've recognized education, health, smuggling of migrants, and gender as our youth priorities to work towards. The Global Compact is central to MyCP's focus, and the inclusion of youth, which MyCP facilitates across the world, is critical for safe, regular, and orderly migration. MyCP therefore urges member states to give young people the voice they need to share their experiences, to promote inclusive decision-making processes, and allocate resources for youth engagement at regional and the international level. And we stand ready and hopeful to facilitate these important dialogues. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you all.
Thank you indeed, Ariane, for that intervention. We'll now return to member states, and amidst all my bits of paper, my list that I have before me goes as follows: Germany, Ghana, the United Kingdom, and Malawi. If there are others who are interested in taking the floor, please do put your nameplates up or indicate so online. But with that, I turn to the representative from Germany, please.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Let me first of all thank the DG for the very comprehensive and engaged presentation of the work of the Network on Migration. And I would also like to say that, of course, Germany aligns with the remarks, the very pertinent remarks of the EU delegation, in particular with a view to the coming regional reviews next year. My statement will be probably more general and broad, and I would like to start by saying that we value very much the coordinating role of IOM for the implementation of the Global Compact on Migration. It gives the GCM a prominent place within the global migration agenda and the agenda of the United Nations. We are convinced that this coordinating role will enhance IOM's strategic leadership with regard to the global management of migration in a multilateral setting, in particular within the United Nations. When we look at the 14 work streams which have been established in the framework of the Network on Migration, we do not only see that the many facets and aspects of the GCM and the global migration agenda are covered. But what is also important is the fact that many UN agencies and international, regional, and non-governmental organizations are active members of the work streams and are closely working together to implement the objectives of the GCM and the global migration agenda. It is equally important that we implement the objectives of the GCM through concrete projects between UN organizations and states. And in that respect, the Migration Multi-Partner Trust Fund, to which Germany is the largest donor, is an indispensable mechanism. And as the DG has explained, it is a mechanism not only about funding, but as the DG has also equally explained, funding is a very important issue. And you have very well demonstrated and outlined this. And I'm very happy that my colleague from Morocco pointed to the joint announcement of the contributions to the trust fund this year by Germany and Morocco, and we very much hope that other donors will follow that example. With regard to the regional consultation and reviews, I think the EU delegation has made very important remarks with regard to the process and what kind of expectations we have to these consultations. I would only like to take the opportunity first to thank the Network Secretariat for the very comprehensive and diligent preparation of the review process so far. And I don't know whether there will be time still to answer a question, but I have a very concrete question with regard to the review process next year. If I may ask that question, perhaps to Jonathan or to the DG, what is the current status of civil society involvement in the consultations and preparations for next year's regional review process. Thank you very much.
I was thinking about that question rather than moderating the.
I hope it's not too difficult
moderating the meeting. Many thanks to the intervention from Germany. I now give the floor to the representative from Ghana, please.
Thank you, Mr. Prentice. Ghana aligns itself with the statement delivered by El Salvador on behalf of the champion countries. And we also join earlier speakers to warmly welcome our new DG, Ms. Amy Pope, as the coordinator of the UN Network on Migration. Madam DG, be assured of Ghana's continued support for your work and commitment to the Global Compact. We also express our appreciation for the comprehensive briefing we just received and commend the Secretariat for the very hard work in advancing the objectives of the Compact. As a steering committee member of the Migration Multi-Partner Trust Fund, my delegation joins your call to appeal to fellow champions countries to contribute to the fund. The fund, since its establishment, is doing so much amazing work and needs our support to do more. So please do remember the fund in your Christmas giveaways. Sorry. Madam Chair, Ghana, as a champion country, is very committed to the GCM and has championed a whole of society and a whole of government approach to migration management through the elaboration of a national migration policy, a national labor migration policy, and a diaspora engagement policy. We are therefore pleased to host the third cross-regional dialogue of the GCM to be held from 28th to 30th November 2023 in Accra. This dialogue will, for the first time, Ghana champion countries representing 4 regions of Africa, Arab states, Europe, and Latin America and the Caribbean. It will build on the discussions from the informal dialogue held in Rabat and Morocco earlier this year. We have so far received confirmation of over 100 participants, including countless stakeholders, exemplifying whole of society and government principle of the GCM. The dialogue will strengthen partnership. It will review progress in the implementation of the GCM from a cross-regional perspective. It will enhance information sharing and share lessons on translating GCM commitment into action on the ground. Ghana further joins others in congratulating the Republic of Sierra Leone for joining the GCM family and wish them all the best as they conduct the business with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we look forward very much to the meeting next week that you just referred to. After Ghana, I have the representative from the UK, Malawi, and then online representatives from Nigeria and Japan. So now I turn to the representative of the UK. Thank you.
Thank you. Many thanks for this helpful update. Firstly, we'd like to warmly congratulate and welcome Amy Pope as coordinator for the United Nations Network on Migration. We look forward to working with you. And the UK looks forward to the upcoming regional reviews of the Global Compact for Migration and the opportunities that this presents to strengthen regional cooperation on migration. We encourage the UN Network on Migration to drive constructive global engagement on migration, including tackling illegal migration. It is important to ensure that global migration can be safe, orderly, and regular, and that we take coordinated effort to reduce irregular and dangerous journeys, protect lives, and create growth in line with the commitments of the Global Compact for Migration. It is good to see the renewed support for the MPTF. This is a vital mechanism for delivering the GCM. The UK remains fully supportive of this mechanism and looks forward to receiving further updates on this in due course. The UK particularly welcomes MPTF projects looking at the intersection between climate change and migration, as well as the links between gender and migration. It is important to make sure that the countries of origin, transit, and destination are properly prepared prepared as the influence of climate on migration continues to grow, so that where it happens, migration can be safe, orderly, and regular. The UK also recognises that a person's gender, as well as other intersecting characteristics, play a key role in how they experience migration across the entire journey. It influences who migrates and who stays, who benefits from migration, and the risks that individuals may face in origin, transit, and destination countries. We recognise the importance of considering these issues and welcome projects looking at these intersections. The UK would also like to thank the network for their continued engagement with states regarding the development of a limited set of indicators for the GCM. We have been grateful for the opportunities to provide feedback on our thoughts, including on the importance that the UK places on ensuring that these indicators maintain the 360-degree approach to the GCM, as well as the clear distinction between irregular and regular migration. It is important to ensure that these indicators do not change the overarching interpretation of the carefully negotiated text of the GCM. We look forward to seeing the next iteration of the draft indicator framework. I would like to see further consideration given to other indicator frameworks in addition to the SDGs when developing the next set of proposals. This may help both to augment current indicators and to identify new ones that better enable a review of the implementation of the GCM.
Thank you very much indeed. To the representative of the United Kingdom. I now turn to the representative of Malawi, followed by Nigeria and then Japan.
Thank you, Chairperson, for giving me the floor. Malawi aligns itself with the statement delivered by El Salvador on behalf of the GCM champions. Allow me to join other speakers before me and on behalf of the government of the people of Malawi to begin by expressing our congratulations to DG Amy Pope on your assumption of duty as coordinator of the UN network. We wish you and your team every success in delivering the mandate of the network. Malawi is known as a country of origin, transit, and destination for migrants and irregular migrants, many of whom will come from the Horn of Africa, and in the quest of employment use the formidable southern route transiting through Malawi on an ongoing basis. Malawi is very grateful for the support it receives from the IOM to assist in the plight of migrants in transit as well as those who have been trafficked. Malawi is a champion country, as I already had alluded to, under the framework of the GCM, and having submitted a national voluntary report on migration in 2021, as well as a migration governance indicators profile in 2022, due to joint efforts from the UN in Malawi, a bill to amend the outdated 1964 Immigration Act commenced to incorporate the elements of the protocol against the smuggling of migrants by land, sea, and air. And we hope that this will be presented in the sitting of Parliament currently in session. This, along with the drafting of the National Labour Migration Policy, as well as the National Migration Policy, illustrates Malawi's commitment to the objectives outlined in the GCM and Migration Governance Network. Malawi is a country that has heavily suffered the consequences of climate change through the cyclones in the last 3 years, which resulted in migration and displacement of people. We welcome IOM's priority focus to also include the impacts of climate change and human mobility through closer collaboration with other stakeholders. Indeed, we hope that this will ensure that human mobility because of climate change is also considered in policy, legislative, and programming areas. In Malawi, currently, the UN is establishing a national network on migration, which comprises of all UN agencies on the ground, which we hope will complement government efforts in achieving the objectives of the GCM objectives. Finally, Malawi wishes to welcome Sierra Leone to the Champions family, and we call on other member states to also join us in this shared commitment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. I think now joining us online is the representative from Nigeria.
Thank you for giving Nigeria the floor. We wish to begin by aligning ourselves with the statement delivered by El Salvador on behalf of the GCM champion countries. We wish to also seize this opportunity to congratulate the Director General of IOM, Ms. Amy Pope, on the assumption of role as coordinator of the UN Network on Migration. Thank the DG for her comprehensive briefing on the work of the network. And we also want to seize this opportunity to welcome Sierra Leone as the 34th member of the GCM champion countries. We wish to use this opportunity to call on other member states to join this family of GCM champion countries. Nigeria has remained resolute on its effort to implement the objectives of the GCM, and we would like to assure the DG and the network that we will continue to implement, we will continue to advance all our commitments to the GCM, and you can be rest assured that you will get our support in the execution of your mandate. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the representative of Nigeria. I now turn to the representative of Japan. I see no other nameplates up. I will then turn to one stakeholder after Japan before turning back to the coordinator for concluding comments. Representative of Japan, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kinuka, Mission of Japan. I'm sorry that I can participate in person today. On behalf of the government of Japan, we would like to congratulate DG Amy for this coordinator. And also thank you, DG Amy, for comprehensive and clear explanation. I'm happy to say that Japan fully supports this initiative, especially the relationship between climate change and migration. So Japan is really looking forward to working with you. I thank you.
Thank you very much to, I don't know why I'm wearing those, to the representative of Japan. And I think bringing up the interventions from the floor, I'd like to turn to the representative of Espace Afrique to make her comments. Please, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for giving us the floor, Mr. Chairman. What I want to talk about today, very briefly, is the fact that Africa faces an emergency. And that emergency is to ensure that migration goes hand in hand with development. Everything started in the United Nations Millennium Conference in 2000 in New York. At the time, we saw this continent called Africa, and we could see that Africa was lagging behind in the field of education, in the field of health, in the field of new technologies, in the field of leisure, in all sorts of basic and fundamental rights. Africa was last and lagging behind. And at the time, later on in 2013, when we started this high-level dialogue on migration and development, at the time, Mr. Ban Ki-moon called for efforts to be made to ensure that migration would not just be, I would say, a source of challenges or disagreements between national governments. He said migration has to be more than that. And migration needs to be a possibility, an opportunity for some countries, particularly the less advanced countries, to move away and out of their, let's say, situation and difficulties. As you know, every 10 years, the UN organizes a conference on the state of development. And we know that when you look at the 49 countries that lag behind, 34 of them are African. There is one from Latin America, which is Haiti, and then 14 from Asia. So when we talk about those 49 countries, when we talk about migration and development, we need again and again to focus on Africa. And we need to make sure that the African diasporas have the ability to truly become involved in the development of the countries of origin. Two important projects have already been identified in a conference that took place in Cotonou just after the 2011 Conference of Istanbul. And two projects at the time were identified. One consisted in establishing an observatory of remittances with the objective to understand the real impact of migrants' remittances on their countries of origin. And I believe that when we talk about remittances, I was using the word emergency earlier, it is urgent to truly ensure that the money that is remitted to Africa truly serves to develop Africa. And at the same time, earlier, we talked about the Multi-Partner Trust Fund. Of course, that fund is essential, but I do believe that for many members of African diasporas, we need, I think, a guarantee fund to be established so that those diasporas can, through that guarantee fund, invest money and create businesses, establish businesses, create employment and jobs in their countries of origin. So I do hope that the UN network on migration will look into the possibility to help the diasporas of Africa, help Africa. The diasporas of Africa, I see that as the sixth continent, and I think that continent has to be able to help the continent of Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And before I hand over to the coordinator for concluding comments, it's my pleasure to give the floor to the permanent representative of Djibouti. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon to all. Let me join my delegation voice in thanking DG Pope for her insightful briefing. And also, I just would like, I don't have a written statement, but I would like to commend her and emphasize some of the issues that were raised in the briefing. In terms of the tools, that is true. IOM Secretariat is making available. I think it's important to disseminate the information, and I'm sure that it happened that some of us present here in Geneva are not aware of those tools. So you can easily imagine that it's not the case in our capitals or so maybe using in a better way. I think you mentioned how you are using the RC through the network from the UN side, but I think using the regional organizations in terms of greater dissemination in collaboration with IOM national offices. IOM can take the lead, but having the regional organization kind of having seminars on those tools and how it can be useful in the national strategies of sub-regions like IGAD and so on, for the members. I think it will be useful to have that kind of approach. And I just wanted also to comment, and it was interesting to listen to the members of and congratulations to Sierra Leone as well in joining the champions. It was also useful to hear from the champions and the work they are doing and how they perceive that work is contributing to a greater implementation of the objectives of the Global Compact. In terms of, I think it's more than ever maybe time. This is something that at our national level, I'm personally working to see how we can be part of and contribute to that network of champions. by joining. But meanwhile, I think it's important also and we will not only try to be part, but advocate also that the best practice should be the showcase within the champions in light of what we see in terms of the narrative, in terms of the policies, measures that when they are not repressive, are regressive vis-à-vis the objective of the Global Compact. And I think it's very important to see how we can use all the tools that we have, including the champions, maybe to starting with those who are members, how we can use it. And the objectives themselves of the Global Compact, yes, human rights, it's central to our actions and commitments. But one of those is the right to life. It's one of them. We cannot talk about a migrant and its rights if the first rights of that migrant it does not exist, which is right to or respected, which is right to life. And I think maybe it's also the opportunity for us to remind ourselves that all the objectives are interdependent and they are all relevant. And it's not like it's not a menu where we are invited to pick and choose. Yes, some might be more relevant, but all of them have the peculiarity of yes, addressing one specific areas, but they're all interdependent. And I think the role of the network in terms of when the guidance it's given also through the network, it's to maybe remind us as member states when we tend to forget those aspects in our discussion and interaction. And again, all the best as new coordinator. We are ready to positively and constructively support and contribute and work even outside while waiting to join the champions. We want to continue championing as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And with the permanent representative of Djibouti, I think that's all the interventions we have time for today. I've nearly managed the timekeeping relatively punctually. I will hand over to the coordinator for concluding comments and remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's clear that we have a thoroughly engaged, thoughtful, strategic group of member states, stakeholders, partners, and for that I am very, very thankful. I want to congratulate Sierra Leone for joining the champions. I want to thank all of our champion countries and El Salvador and Morocco for your leadership on this issue. But I also want to recognize all countries who are here today, who are involved in this conversation, who are actively engaging to implement the objectives of the Global Compact on Migration. And I want to recognize from the start how important that document is. So I've heard the feedback about let's not pick and choose, but I also want to recall for all of us how hard it was to arrive at the GCM in the first place, that is a document that took much input from all over the world, that it was hard fought, that every word in it was discussed and negotiated, and it's not our intent as the stewards, as the Secretariat, as the network for the Global Compact for Migration to discount any pieces of that document, recognizing that it was quite a historic, groundbreaking achievement and one that would be quite difficult to renegotiate at this moment in time. So I want to reassure all of our stakeholders that that is something that we take very seriously as the stewards of that that document. I also want to recognize the whole of the network, right? Because we at IOM are the Secretariat, we lead it, but we are not the only ones who can make it work. Right, so that is really important to say. And I want to reiterate that having every part of the UN system working, having every member state, having every stakeholder is absolutely essential if we are going to achieve what are kind of very lofty objectives, a comprehensive rights-based approach to migration, one in which we are addressing the drivers of irregular migration, but also creating opportunities out of migration that benefit all people, that ultimately lead to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, not just benefit from the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. So what do we need? One is that we need top-level engagement from every stakeholder. Within the UN family, the executive committee of the network will meet in January. We want all the heads of agencies engaged, having a sense of obligation, of responsibility in terms of implementing the Global Compact. We at IOM, as the UN network, or the UN Migration Agency, are not the only ones who can achieve this compact. We need UNHCR, we need ILO, we need WFP, we need every part of the UN family to achieve what we're trying to achieve. We also need strong engagement of civil society. Right? So if we are to create what I've described as this ecosystem that enables better migration outcomes for more people, we cannot do it alone in the UN, and governments cannot do it alone. We can set policies, we can share best practices, we can provide support, but ultimately we need everybody playing their part. So recognizing that, I'd say that we have an ongoing number of regional stakeholder consultations between now and the regional reviews, but it's not enough. And I will say, especially for our civil society actors, many of them are operating at budgets that do not get anywhere close to a UN budget, even if those of us in the UN often say, well, we need more to do more. Look at civil society, and particularly civil society actors who are working in countries that do not have the resources. We want them to be at the table. They are an important part of this ecosystem, but we need to make sure they have funding to do it. We need to make sure they can participate in person. We need to make sure they're part of the conversation. So along those lines, I'm going to give a call out because this, our trust fund to implement the Global Compact, the MPTF, for which, by the way, just $1 million more, that's all we need. But that fund, right now, we cannot give access to civil society to use. So that is a place where we need our member states, we need our donors to take a hard look at whether, if we want to achieve the objectives of the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration, how we can bring civil society into that trust fund so that they too can access those resources. So I'm putting a plug in because if we really want to make this work, we need to get everybody to the table. We need to make sure they have the resources they need. I'll say the regional reviews, that's an opportunity to hold ourselves accountable. It's an opportunity to really put in the hard work to get where we need to go. I want to recognize that we are going to continue to consult with all member states on this, and that ultimately the recommendations that come from the Secretary General are going to be up for our member states' consideration. So we hope that member states will be actively involved in this process. There will be active conversations. We'll really drive a comprehensive 360-degree approach to the Global Compact on Migration, which I believe will address all the concerns of everyone involved. Now, I recognize that I have taken 4 minutes more of your time, so I will very quickly conclude with saying it is Thanksgiving. And I am thankful for every single one of you who is part of this process. I am thankful to our Secretariat, who puts in a lot of unrecognized work and effort into bringing together this very unruly family There's an expression of herding cats, but I'm not sure what we would be called, herding pigeons perhaps, because the task is really a difficult one, but they do a tremendous job. So let's be thankful for them. Let's be thankful for our civil society actors. Let's be thankful for all of you who are doing the hard work, and for our UN partners around the world who are doing work in challenging circumstances to support people who are most in need. And most of all, let's be thankful for the migrants themselves, who, despite undergoing tremendous challenges, bring much good to the communities in which they ultimately settle. And for that, we are all richer. So thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving, and I appreciate your engagement.